Jacob, you wanted to talk about Jerry Lee Lewis. Something happened. Fill us in.
Jerry Lee Lewis, what can we say about a man who grew up as not just as a biological cousin, but as a virtual stepbrother in the same house with Jimmy Swaggart, an evangelist who became discredited, and Jerry Lee Lewis, who always knew the gospel his whole life, and who began playing the same kind of music as Jimmy Swaggart did. They began by playing gospel music and gospel piano, and that was his background. And he exemplifies the relationship between early rock and roll and, of course, the gospel tradition. Like the black blues musicians of the Delta in Mississippi, south of Memphis, Jerry Lee Lewis embodies a contradiction between what became the rock music of the 1950s and what it engendered in the 1960s and 70s, and a conservative Christian tradition. Quite a situation. I don't know what to make of it. I know the man knew the gospel. I just hope at some point that he put his faith in what he knew to be true and in who he knew to be true. Because if he didn't, he's not going to be able to plead ignorance. That man absolutely knew the gospel. Now, he's not the only one. I would say the same thing is largely true, certainly about Elvis Presley. We know from his half-brother, who is a Christian. We know about many of these early people in soul music, like Aretha Franklin, whose father was a preacher. We know about this from many, many sources. They all came from the Bible Belt. Black and white, soul and rock, blues. They all had a gospel basis and a knowledge of the gospel, but none more than Jerry Lee Lewis. What can we say? Jerry Lee Lewis helped fund his cousin Jimmy Swaggart's ministry. He took money that he made in the rock music industry in the early days, and he paid travel expenses and ministry costs and things to launch or subsidize the launching of his cousin's evangelistic ministry. That's quite a thing. It's quite a world to be trapped in. What can we say? Well, we can't say anything, but one thing is for sure. He either returned to the faith of his childhood and what he knew, or he's going to spend eternity wishing he didn't. Great balls of fire can have more than one meaning.